What happens when silence speaks louder than legacy? On a night when Washington slept, the son of a former president walked alone, seeking not escape, but truth. Barron Trump had always been in the shadows, not because he wanted to be, but because his name cast an enormous shadow, one that stretched far beyond the walls of his childhood home. The expectations, the constant whispers, the headlines, they were all louder than his own voice. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, as the cool night air brushed against his skin, Barron felt the weight of the world pressing him from all sides. Yet he could not sleep. He found himself standing outside the mansion, staring at the dark horizon. The city lights twinkled far below, a sprawling web of life and movement. It was a city full of voices, but tonight, all he could hear was the silence. Was he just a figurehead, a name to be whispered about in the tabloids? Or was there more to his life than the expectations others had placed upon him? As he wandered through the empty streets of Washington, Barron couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, a feeling that he was no longer sure of the path he was on. "Why do I feel like I'm just walking through someone else's life?" he muttered to himself. His footsteps echoed against the pavement, a sound so solitary that it seemed to carry all his doubts, all his fears. Tonight, he wasn't just Barron Trump, the son of the former president. Tonight, he was just a young man, lost in a city that should have felt like home, but somehow didn't. His mind kept drifting back to the events of the past few weeks. The public appearances, the rehearsed smiles, the handshakes, the cameras, it all seemed so hollow. What was the point of it all? Was he destined to live a life scripted by others, or could he carve out a path for himself? As the cool breeze wrapped around him, Barron's thoughts were interrupted by the faintest sound, a rustle. Then from the shadows a figure emerged. It was a woman, hunched over, her face hidden beneath a tattered hood. She moved slowly, almost as if she were afraid of being seen, but there was something about her that intrigued Barron. Her presence was unusual, like an anomaly in the orderly night, and it was enough to pull Barron from his reverie. Without thinking, he walked toward her. The woman looked up as Barron approached. Her eyes, though weary, held a sharpness that made him stop in his tracks. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, her voice raspy but direct. Barron hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I couldn't sleep," he said simply, feeling the weight of his own words. It sounded weak, even to him, but something about this woman's gaze made him feel vulnerable, and he couldn't help but share a piece of himself with her. The woman studied him for a moment, then nodded as if she understood. "Yeah, I get that a lot," she said, her voice softening. "The night has a way of making everything clear, but it also has a way of making everything feel heavier." Barron sat beside her on the cold concrete bench, feeling an odd sense of connection. "I don't know what I'm doing with my life," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone expects something from me, but I don't know if that's who I am or who I'm supposed to be." The woman let out a long sigh, her breath visible in the cool air. "Expectations can be a curse, kid," she said quietly. "But let me tell you something, they can also be a gift if you use them the right way. You see, you're not the first person to feel lost, and you won't be the last. The question is, are you willing to find yourself?" Barron frowned, trying to grasp her words. "How do I even begin?" he asked, feeling a pang of frustration. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "Well," the woman said, pausing to glance up at the dark sky, "maybe that's exactly the point. Maybe you've spent too much time trying to be someone else. What if I told you that you're already more than enough? That the answer doesn't lie in becoming something else, but in embracing who you are?" Barron didn't know how to respond to that. All his life he had been defined by others, his father, his name, his legacy. The idea that he could be enough just as he was felt foreign to him. But as the woman spoke, something stirred deep within him. Could it be true? Could he find peace in simply being himself? For a long while, neither of them spoke. Barron sat there, letting her words wash over him, the cool air filling the silence. He realized that he had been searching for answers in all the wrong places. It wasn't the world that needed to change. It was him. The real question wasn't about who the world expected him to be, but who he truly wanted to become. And for the first time in a long time, Barron felt the weight on his chest lift just a little. "What's your name?" Barron asked, breaking the silence. "Mrs. Kingsley," she replied simply. "How did you end up here?" Barron asked, his curiosity piqued. Mrs. Kingsley chuckled softly, the sound bitter yet kind. "Life has a way of throwing curveballs at you, kid," she said. "I didn't always live like this, but one day I lost everything: my home, my family, my future. I came here to start over, but you can't outrun your past, no matter how hard you try." Barron's heart clenched as he listened. Her story mirrored his own in many ways: the feeling of being lost, of trying to outrun something you can't escape. But Mrs. Kingsley had found something that Barron had yet to discover: peace. "How did you find peace?" Barron asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Kingsley paused, then looked at him with a kind smile. "By stopping to listen, by accepting what I had, not what I thought I needed, and by realizing that sometimes the greatest strength comes from vulnerability." Barron felt a lump rise in his throat. He had spent so much of his life running from his legacy, from the expectations, from the person he was supposed to be. But now, sitting next to this stranger, he realized that the only way to truly find peace was to stop running. As the night wore on, Barron stood up, a newfound clarity in his mind. He wasn't sure what the future held or what path he would take, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe again. He thanked Mrs. Kingsley for her wisdom and began to walk back toward his home. The streets of Washington seemed different now, less daunting. He wasn't just the son of a former president anymore. He was Barron Trump, and that was enough. As he reached the doorstep of his mansion, Barron stopped and looked up at the dark sky, feeling a sense of gratitude for the strange encounter that had changed his life. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, he didn't need them. All he needed was to embrace who he was and trust that, in time, everything else would fall into place. The weight of the world still pressed on him, but now Barron knew that it was a weight he could carry. For Barron Trump, that sleepless night was a turning point. It wasn't just a walk through Washington's quiet streets or an encounter with a stranger. It was the moment he chose to confront his own fears, his own insecurities. Mrs. Kingsley had shown him that it was okay to be vulnerable, to not have everything figured out. And in that vulnerability, he found strength. In the days that followed, Barron's life didn't magically change, but he did. He began to stop running from the expectations and instead focused on finding his own voice. It was a slow journey, but with each step, he felt a little more at peace. Barron had learned that no one could define him but himself, and as he looked toward the future, he knew that the true legacy he would leave behind wouldn't be the one written for him. It would be the one he created with his own hands. The decision that changed his life wasn't a dramatic revelation, but a quiet acceptance of who he truly was. And in that quiet acceptance, Barron Trump had found the courage to live a life that was truly his. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.